Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and welcome back to the CSM 17 coverage by the Eve Universe show. This time with Torvald Uruz. Yeah, wee!
What's going on, y'all?
No. How's it going, man? You doing all right?
Freaking fantastic. I'm in a house. I've got internet. I am CSM stuff's firing up. I'm excited, man. It's following FanFest. Life has just been going uphill, and it's amazing. And
Excellent.
Yeah, so CSM time running around, and it's like, you know what? Let's go for round two.
Let's do this. All right. Well, for those people, obviously, I know you quite well for various reasons, but you have a strong history with faction warfare. You have a strong history with small scale, like, solo PvP. You've got a history with Abyssal proving conduits, old and new. Is there anything else that you want us to know about yourself before we begin?
Nope. Other than, like, a lot of people, they look at my name and they immediately think Abyssal stuff, PvE, or instance PvE. And some people are like, man, all that guy cares about is instance stuff. I'm like, I don't think instance, like, other than what we already have, like, nothing new, nothing. We have Abyssals, we have that, we have the Proving Grounds. We don't need anything new instance. But yeah, that's my big thing is really faction warfare and PvE as a whole across the entire universe, really.
Right. So I guess I'm going to begin by calling you out a little bit, probably. Well, almost a year ago, I think it was, you put out a Reddit post. You joined the hordes of Reddit, becoming a bitter vet officially, and calling out CCP for their failure to address your concerns that you brought up and how you weren't going to have anything to do with it. And yet here you are asking us to vote you in once again. What has changed?
So before FanFest, honestly, you get kicked down and you're like, all right, you get back up and you're like, you know what? I'm not done. Like, the job's not finished. I need to go in there. And faction warfare, getting that revamp was my entire, like, before FanFest, that was my entire goal, right? So yeah, I definitely hit a low point because CSM, something that a lot of people don't realize is CSM is a lot of work. You're taking something that you love, a passion, and you're making an obligation where you now have to answer to, the people who you represent in the game. You have to be present. And I'll go ahead and say, like, the most important, one of the top qualities of a CSM candidate is being active with the meetings and everything.
I'm going to cut in here and say and reinforce your success in this, because of all of the CSMs, your CSM was the one I heard the most from CCP about. Like, it wasn't CCP delivering ideas to you guys. You guys came fit with PowerPoint presentations. This is one of the reasons why you were so upset, right? Like, you actually, like, did your research and brought them, like, your doctoral thesis on faction warfare. So, your work was very much, like, in depth. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so going on the CSM, obviously I had a list of things that I was focusing on, and faction warfare was number one because, obviously, Ash, my history with faction warfare, but for those of you who don't know, I have a long history with faction warfare. And so that was my whole goal, getting on CSM. And it took some time to get that ball rolling. CSM is a huge time commitment, and basically our goal. So I worked with Phantomite and Gobbins. They both had some interest in this. Phantomite, heavy low sec, and Gobbins, he just cares about the player base, all together. So the three of us kind of came together, and we had different focal areas. Mine was faction warfare. So we brought it up with CCP Dopamine at the time, who was running the CSM, now it's CCP Swift. And we basically said, hey, we want to sit down with the people who make the decisions and decide what happens with the game. And we want to say, this is why you need to fix faction warfare. And initially, I went into it with the idea of, all right, I need to design a presentation based around, here's what's wrong with faction warfare. Here's what needs fixed with it. And instead, working with CCP Dopamine, he was incredible to work with. He said, hey, man, this is great, but you need to tell us, like, why we need to devote time and resources into this. And I guess this was, from my experience on CSM 15, there was not a lot of times where it was like, hey, we're going to present you as something. A majority of the time it was CSP bringing us. So I don't know if I think that was the only one. That was the only one I could remember. Yeah, we got to go ahead. CSP Dopamine confirmed, hey, you've got the meeting. All the people that were going to be involved were going to be there and come up with a presentation. And so we worked pretty hard, collaborated with Phantomite and Gobbins, and we came up with a presentation. And that was where a lot of my defeated feeling came from right after CSM 15. It was like, man, a year of my life just down the drain and there's nothing to show for it. And we were sitting in the crowd at the Eve Fan Fest as I was sitting there with my wife, and the faction warfare thing came up, and my wife looked over at me and there's a tear coming down my eye, man. Cause I was like, this is my work. This is what I fought for. This is what I was going for. This is literally happening. And I guess it took longer than I imagined. I had no idea how time frames worked, but
software development always takes longer than you would like it to or expect it to. But okay, so but obviously, as I've said, CCP Aurora went on stage and said just all of the right words, right? Like she identified the problem, she identified our top solutions. Like it was like as if she had been part of every fucking faction warfare conversation that we had had in 5 years or, more. How much of that conforms? I'm not going to say how much of it do you take credit to, but how much of it conforms with the things that you presented?
So I was told that my presentation was used a lot recently. Like they have the files, they have that whole thing, they have the meeting minutes, the recording. I was told that it was used quite a bit recently with all this going on. So obviously there's a lot that went into faction warfare. It definitely was not just me stepping up and saying, hey, this needs fixed. The community's been screaming about it for years. But I'm not trying to be big headed or anything, but I can definitely say having that meeting with all the, there's people that make decisions at CSP, then there's people who implement those decisions, people who check to make those decisions are working how they should be. Having that meeting with all the right people, it influenced it because it basically showed them hey, we really do need to work on this. This is something that has a lot of potential. And that was one of my goals going into it. I was rather than just fixing an old dusty part of the game, there's so much damn potential for faction warfare across the board. But I can proudly say yes, a lot of stuff. The one thing that I've always seen it mentioned, and I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. The Frontline System, that wasn't something that I directly brought to them and say, hey, this is something we should do. There's a couple different ideas throughout the entire community. But I think the Frontline System is pretty cool. I'm excited for that. Focusing content.
Yeah, I know I had suggested the idea of what I'd called campaigns, right? Bringing focus to specific areas, specific constellations. And I know that the idea of the Frontline Systems had been suggested before by other people. But I think that it sounds to me like they're synergizing those two concepts pretty well. So I guess it's safe to say that what was eventually fell out of her mouth conforms pretty well with what you outlined in those presentations.
Yeah. And like I said, my presentation, there's a lot of research and stuff that I went into the different Discords, communities, past articles, past Reddit posts. There's a lot of stuff. I posted the whole presentation on Discord or on Reddit a while back there. I got permission to do that. Ash, one of the things we did back in Aderon Federation Uprising, one of my favorite moments in Eve a couple different times was system sieges.
Yep.
24/7 fleets going, ships seated. You could log in. It doesn't matter if you were online for 5 minutes or an hour, you could jump. There's a fleet going, there are ships to be handed out. And in my opinion, that is the greatest content I've ever experienced in Eve. Because I know, man, I could be waking up, getting ready for work. I could hop on Eve and I can contribute to the siege that was going on. And so that was something I really hit with them is, hey, having this focused war, this constant action is a blast. It's incredible content. It's accessible.
It's what I was trying to capture with campaigns. Actually, that's why I suggested that as my primary focus, because you're right. Ultimately, faction warfare is some of the best gameplay in Eve, in my opinion. And sieges are when faction warfare are at their best. or is
Yep.
Belfast.
Yep. Hands down, man. I miss that stuff. It was a lot of fun. And I think these frontline systems have a huge potential for that kind of gameplay again, to where different groups, I mean, whether they're coordinated or not, people are going to know that they can go to this system and that's where the action's going to be. And that's where they're guaranteed going to get some content, you know?
Right. So you did a great job bringing everything together and giving CCP something to work with and getting the ball rolling. Why do you need to come back? Like, you've given them the information. What more can contribute now as a CSM member again?
So one thing I definitely took from my term on CSM was a lot of things were brought to us after they've been done. Like everything's been, put into place, and it's basically, hey guys, here's what we have. What do you think? And sometimes it's like, oh, this is great. Other times it's like, you could have done this. So there's a whole other portion I want to go on for CSM, but I would like to be actively involved, especially this year. Like, it's crucial this year that we get someone on the CSM who has faction warfare experience, because they're working on it this year. They've told us, they kind of laid out the plan, the timeline at FanFest. And so it's crucial that we have somebody actively involved in that whole process. That way they can bounce stuff off each other. Rather than CSP, going a certain route and doing something, they have someone that they can talk to and confer with, rather than just sending it, making it happen, letting it go live, and then people being like, wait a second, this isn't very good,
Right. Yeah, it's pretty critical, especially since it doesn't look like they're doing like small tweaks, but they're making a whole new system. So, having really good feedback in that is going to be essential, because, I mean, even in the best of conditions, you're going to expect there to be a lot of massaging and whatnot that's going to be necessary. So you said that there's another piece to this that you wanted to run about, not just faction warfare?
Yeah. So, this really happened more recently in the past couple of months, but PvE, just in general across EVE, from high sec, low sec, null sec, and I know jack shit about wormholes, so I really can't say anything there, but I just PvE in general across the entire game.
What about that? It needs help, or you want to advocate for it? What is exactly your position on PvE?
Really just needs help across the board. I know one thing that really spoke out to me in the past couple months was people go join nullsec coalitions, and they go out there with the idea that they can live out there, operate out there, and they're good, but they join these coalitions, and then the people they're talking to out there say, oh yeah, you want to make money, go to high sec and run abyssal sites. And I'm like, that's just a huge red flag. That should never be an answer. That should never be the go-to, especially when you're expected to live out there and be able to operate and function out there. That was just like one of those things that stuck out to me. I was like, that's a problem.
Yeah. I have many times suggested that, like, of all of the people that were hit by scarcity, nullsec probably got cut the worst. Every single hit, hit them square in the chest. Everybody else was grazed here and there. Some people were hit with certain changes, but nullsec has had quite the pummeling in the last couple of years. So, but what kind of, here's the thing though, on the one hand, the PvE is lackluster. On the other hand, a lot of people think that the PvE shouldn't necessarily be invested in, that good PvP is not something that could be even achieved, and therefore effort that goes in that regard may be wasted. And on top of that, we have people that are not interested in what they call, non-consensual PvE. They don't want to feel like they're either have to do PvE. They don't even want to have to do PvE for their ISK, but gate rats and even Sancha incursions or drifter attacks. What exactly do you want seen improved with the PvE?
So overall, one thing that seems really important for EVE players, and I mean, I can definitely attest to this, is levels of activity. So back whenever I lived in Null, or whenever we lived in Null, the big thing was VNI ratting. You go out there, you with a VNI, drones, you let them go, and you could go use the bathroom, you could go do whatever. Whereas stuff like Abyssal PvE is more, you got to be paying attention. You got to be at your keyboard. You got to be piloting. So it seems like it's a pretty good mixture of people who want hands-off PvE to where they don't really have to be very intense with it. And then there's people who want active PvE where they can play a game and have fun, but still make money and whatnot.
Right.
So it's really kind of looking at different routes with that. Because me, I'll tell you right now, going out and doing missions or ratting in a VNI, I'd rather go do literally anything else. I'd rather just not play if my option is going and doing missions or ratting in a VNI, because it's boring. It's very cookie cutter. It's the same thing. Everything's in the same spot. But Abyssal content. Now, I'm not talking about the instant stuff. Like I said, I think it's really important that CSP like shies away from instant stuff. We have what we have. That's all we need. We don't need more. But I think it'd be an incredible thing for CSP to do, to give people who want that fun, engaging PvE, like Abyssals, where you have to, and the Gila is kind of an exception to that. But if you fly a certain ship in the Abyss, man, you're piloting. You might be manual piloting. You're paying attention. It's intense. It's fun. Like, I like it. I know a lot of other people do.
Sure. I mean, you can trivialize it, but I mean, honestly, like that, you can also cheat yourself when you're going and working out. You know what I mean? Like, sure, but what do you like? Cool. You can say that you went to the gym, but your muscles aren't any stronger. Like, I think that the ISK generation is only half of the puzzle when it comes to the Abyss and its use as a learning tool or just even a practicing tool is often understated.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you tell someone to go do missions and get up to a battleship and run level 4s, or you have someone go to Abyssals, who's going to be the better pilot coming out of it? Just solely based off that gameplay. I've been
Do you feel like the Abyss is in a good place right now?
Yeah, now it's tricky because a lot of people complain about how easy. Now, here's my take on it. Abyssals, I don't think you should hate on how other people play the game. I don't think that if you're suffering out null with making money, I don't think you should look at something else and be like, oh, that sucks. That something needs done about that. I think the issue is that your space sucks, not that something else is really good. But my kind of personal issue with the Abyss and where it's at right now, and it's literally a single ship, the Gila. And Fonz in chat mentions the Storm Cheater. That's another one. But if you fly something in the Abyss, people say it's riskless PvE. You make a shit ton of money and you don't have to worry about any kind of risk. If you fly a Vagabond, a Sacrilege, even an Ishtar, you're going to have some challenges. It's not easy cookie cutter stuff. You're flying, you're paying attention, you're on the edge of your seat. If you fly a Gila, you could take a nap while you're running the Abyss, essentially. So I think the Abyss is in a good spot. I think, and you can't balance a ship around one certain thing. I mean, there's how many different things to do in Eve. You can't balance the Gila because it's easy as hell in the arena or the Abyss. You have to, it's tricky. I think the Abyss is in a good spot. I don't like where the Gila's at in that. But like I said, you can't balance one ship around one specific activity.
So you said that we already have the Abyss and we don't need more. Are you implying that they shouldn't like make new weathers or do other updates like they did when they introduced the new rat types and stuff? It should just.
Oh no, that stuff. No, I definitely think, and I know Fansui, he's came up with an incredible idea for a weather that penalizes the Gila and missiles, but bonuses like ship turrets and whatnot. I definitely think there's more potential to play around in the Abyss with that. But as far as adding new instance content, no. Like there's, instant stuff, let it be the Abyss, let them play with the Abyss, do new stuff to the Abyss, but ultimately that's it. That's our instance PvE. That's all we need. That's all we got. Keep it like that. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff.
New player experience?
Okay, different there because
Fair enough. I just wanted to make sure that we call that as a distinction.
Yeah, definitely good stuff there.
Okay, so there's a lot of really knowledgeable people coming onto the CSM right now. Now there is only 3 incumbents, like actual incumbents, and but there's three of you that are still veterans of the CSM, as it were. However, one of the incumbents is Arcia, which is also into faction warfare. What knowledge do you bring to the table that you would be concerned isn't being represented when these discussions come to pass?
Are you talking between like her and myself?
No, not like any specific person, but I mean like just in general, like what do you bring to the table that others don't?
Man, this is gonna sound a little weird, but I enjoy Eve and I like having fun with it. So I'm not the best with. All right, I'm crap with ship balancing and stuff like that, and actual like raw numbers. But as someone who just want like, I'm not a min max or anything. I explained it last time I was on CSM to a lot of CCPers. I was like, I should be excited to do something. I should want to do this because it's fun and because it's engaging. And I can't speak for other CSM members, but I know, like me personally, whenever I'm looking at something, whether it's me bringing it to CSP or them bringing it to me, I'm looking at it as, all right, what's your average Joe logging into Eve? What are they going to think about this? Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be tedious? Are they going to want to do it? Is it going to excite them? Is it going to be something that they're looking forward to do? Or is it going to be something that they're going to dread? So, can't speak for the other guy, for the other CSM candidates, but I know, like me personally, that's something that's huge to me. Like, Eve doesn't have to be a job or an obligation. Yeah, fun checker. There we go. Like, everyone's got their certain way of playing Eve, but at the end of the day, it's a game and it should be fun. Like, it shouldn't be a job. It shouldn't be something where you got to set timers for when, I mean, obviously you have to do that in Eve, but, just for like the average Joe out there, I'm not an FC. I'm not a coalition leader. I'm not anyone anywhere. I'm just a dude who wants to log in, and I should have a smile on my face when I'm playing the game because that's what it is. It's a game, and I want to enjoy it.
How do you feel about the new Ark system? The idea of like the story coming out through, or the like features coming out through the events and story and all that kind of stuff. Do you feel like that's in the direction of the kind of because that is kind of tied into the whole faction warfare stuff too? Because like one of the things about faction warfare is that like these are people that have voluntarily joined the empires, and so this drive towards faction warfare has also been a drive towards handing over more of the like affairs of the universe to these NPC actors. This has become very controversial. What's your feelings on it?
Honestly, so we have Eve broken up in different categories: null sec, low sec, high sec, wormhole space. I'm excited for it. Like, I remember the Triglavian invasion. That was something new and crazy. You didn't know what was going to happen, but we influenced it. I know there's different opinions on that. I remember when we would get like a video or something would happen, everyone would be like, what the hell's going on here? It would be like crazy. And Eve sandbox, player-driven sandbox, very important, but there's different areas of space. Now, I don't think these arcs should affect... Nullsec should be left alone. That's where the players drive the stories. And still, in high sec and low sec, we drive the story. But this is an MMORPG, and I think it's important for there to be like aspects of that in there for people who enjoy that stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, who has a right to say how people enjoy a game? It's not like the CSP's killing the player stories or interaction. Like, these nullsec guys can still go to war. These wormhole space guys, they can still have some crazy stuff happen. Even in high sec and low sec, they still have things that's player driven, but having like NPC driven arcs, I mean, that appeals to a whole different variety of players. And, it's interesting, and it's got to be done in a way to where it doesn't impede other play styles or like tries to, narrate the players' stories. But I'm excited for it. I think it's something Eve needs. Going off the faction warfare thing, one thing I've always hated about faction warfare, even when I thought faction warfare was amazing in its prime, it is a barren wasteland. You've got Kadari and Galente at each other's throats, but you've got one single NPC sitting there guarding their complex, and it's like, well, that's dumb, So right. I think there's
it's not very like it's very gamey and therefore not very engaging. As I said, like people that join faction warfare, at least like the concept of faction warfare, you would think that they would want to be engaged with the empires. And, when I did CSM, or not CSM, but faction warfare, like roundtables in the past, that is something that has stood out to me, is that, people wanted to feel more connected to the empires that they were part of. And, even with the invasions, one of the biggest complaints was when Zoria and Valkynier stopped talking to people, right? Like, people wanted direction. So I think that if done correctly, it can be a move towards the sandbox and give more purpose to our actions, because our actions will resonate not just within a SOV map, but also within the history of these empires. If done incorrectly,
yeah, it's important that Eve continues to be player driven and the stories that happen are player driven. But there's a whole group of people who love the thought of interacting with the NPCs. And like, I mean, we've got all these factions and very little stuff actually happening with them. So yeah, like you said, it could be done correctly. And that's where, I would love to be a part of CSM while that's going on. That way, when feedback's being given, when they're asking for our feedback, I can be one of those people where I can look at it where, all right, what does it mean for the person who wants to log in and jump into that content? What does it mean for the people that's going to be affected by that? I want to be able to have a say in that, be able to look at it from that point of view.
And I think it seems like that question doesn't get asked a lot. Enough. That's true. Often we have content without any path to getting there. Like it's legitimately a challenge. Even for those of us who want to make a path, it's a challenge, let alone having a path that leads people into it. So I definitely agree that we need that voice present.
Yeah, I obviously have no experience. I mean, I have experience in every part of Eve except for wormhole space. And then there's, a couple off things that I haven't done. But I feel like I have a good ability to look at something being done and think about how it affects the average player, and I can't look at it from like an FC or a leadership position. I can just look at it for like the individual players and how it affects them. And so if I'm on the CSM and they're talking about these arcs and storylines and something's happening and, the result's going to be X, well, then I like to think that I could look at that and be like, well, I can't speak for wormholers. That's why it's so damn important that we get a wormhole person on the CSM. But you can look at it and be like, well, that's going to screw over these guys out here when it shouldn't, or something like that. Yeah. I don't think people should be forced into it, but yeah, it'd be good to have different perspectives. That way we can, when this stuff is happening, you can give proper feedback, and that way something doesn't happen. It's like, oh, cool, they just released a feature and it screwed over this entire group that it shouldn't have,
Was there any point this last year that you were like, oh, damn it, I should have run after all? Like, was there anything that made you just be like, kick yourself for not running?
Honestly, no, because from my experience on CSM 15, this past year has been a lot. Like this past year was a lot of stuff that we had meetings about in CSM 15. And a lot of the stuff that we've been in uproar over has been things that literally nobody can control, whether it's CSM players, anyway, it's CCP. They're doing what they're doing and we can't sway it. We can tweak stuff here and there. Right. But over the last year, there's nothing that surprised me because it was like, all right, we talked about this. We had these meetings and it was definitely a sense of, hey, this is happening. We need to do this. And then when it comes to, a lot of the player uproar was marketing stuff that's happened over the past year, sales packs and whatnot. CSM ultimately, like, there's very little we can do. We can bring to them we can come to them pissed off and then say, hey, us and 100,000 players say this is dumb, but CSP is a company and they're marketing. They're not going to listen, So obviously they are going to.
So what do you say to all the people that says, what's the point, right? Like, there's a lot of people that look at all that and say that the CSM isn't doing anything because CCP isn't listening to them anyways. What the hell is this all about, right? Like, and I guess speak to yourself a year ago when you were making that post. There are people that feel that same way right now, especially based on, what we did and didn't get announced at FanFest. Speak to those people and explain and help us understand why the CSM is important enough for you to want to dedicate your year to, and why it's important for people to vote for you to make sure that, to be a facilitator in that.
So right off the bat, if someone says CSM is useless and CCP doesn't listen, that's automatically 100% guaranteed false. I mean, it's the amount of stuff we talk to, and there's different departments within CCP, and that's something that kind of surprises me about the community. A lot of people, the pack, the retriever pack that came out, a lot of people were pissed off thinking, CCP X or CCP Y, whatever, and they don't realize there's different departments in CCP. There's, people who do stuff, people who make decisions. But CSM, they do stuff. They do a lot. In a year time frame, we sit through minimum one meeting a week, and those meetings go anywhere from 1 hour to 3 hours. And sometimes we have 2 or 3 meetings a week. And then that's not including all the discussions we have on Slack, private discussions, meetings that we set up. So CSM is incredibly useful. And if it's something that we're given the ability to do, we 100% have to take advantage of that. Go ahead.
Futility has a really good point, I think. And I think this is a good one for you, which is that, like, so is this an issue with the CSM needing to communicate better? I mean, like I like to say that CCP, more than anything else, has a communication issue. Could it be that CSM has a communication issue? We haven't really talked about this much, but you are a streamer. I can't quite remember, and it's been a couple of years, how much of like the CSM do you allow? Do you use your stream and your content to bring visibility to the CSM? Did you do it before, and do you plan on doing it this time?
So that is a really difficult topic because NDAs, there's no, like when we have a meeting, there's no checklist at the end of that meeting saying you can talk about this, you cannot talk about this. It's safe to assume, I mean, you got to think, if you break NDA, you're permanently banned from EVE forever, and who knows, you could be legally in trouble breaking an NDA, like you're talking legal action. So it's tough because like when we're talking about stuff in meetings, and it's really hard being a streamer because like there's times where I just had a meeting with CCP and I go on stream and I could, without even thinking about it, say something, and not everything we talk about is like super hush hush top secret, oh, you can't tell anybody. But it's safe to say that a lot of things, unless we ask specifically, hey, can we tell the player base this? Which, we usually do communicate. But that's a huge issue with CSM and communication is NDA stuff, because a lot of times we're talking about stuff that CSP is working on. And, it's stuff that they don't want people knowing about. They want our feedback. And obviously we can't run and tell people that. Yeah, it's such a difficult thing where I try my best to say what I can. And if we go into a meeting and we talk about something or something happens, we'll say, hey, can we tell people about this? And sometimes we'll get a thumbs up. Sometimes we'll get a, run around answer. Sometimes it'll be a no. And so it's like, okay, the best we can do. And, I learned a lot from Brisk and Mike from my CSM term is it's really hard to take notes during meetings, but summarizing what the CSM has done and what's been going on every month, just kind of laying it out there. We got to get approval before we do that, Right. So it's just such a slippery slope, and it's one thing that unless CCP comes out and says, okay, yep, you can tell everybody everything what we talk about, then at that point, what's the point of a CSM? Because then CCP can just bring that stuff to anybody and not have a focus group. Yeah,
that's true, lot of but I mean, like you can still react to things, right? And you can show. Don't you feel like it at least? Do you feel like this year's CSM has done a good job at communicating their effectiveness at all? Or do you feel like there's some way that you could make it better? Or do you feel like this is just the community expecting incorrectly?
So.
That's my elegant way of putting it, I guess.
It's
your expectations are misplaced.
For them communicating stuff, I mean, from what it looks like, and I got to say the forums, I don't use them much. I never really liked using forums throughout my whole life. I like Discord. I've come to hate Reddit recently because it's just such a cesspool of shit. But Reddit, can be a good place. Twitter,
Reddit in general is can be good, but the Eve Reddit has certainly hit a new threshold of radioactive. Yeah,
this community is usually the greatest gaming community, but I remember FanFest. I looked at Reddit and I was like, I got to delete this crap. But from what I've seen, CSM's communication with what they've been given is good. Like the whole point you elect someone on the CSM is because you trust them to go in there and give their feedback and respond, right? And you think that they represent you. So in essence, you're trusting CSM to go on there and represent you how they should. And if they don't communicate that, that's because they can't. So I think, there's a lot that CSM members have to go through. And I think their communication's good. And I just think if you vote on someone, you trust them, especially if they've been a repeat member, if they've been on it before, you got to trust that they're making the decisions. And you can tell with anything major, like if you see all CSM members simultaneously agreeing, yes, this is crap, like the retriever pack, stuff like that, you don't even need to ask them. Right. They've already told CCP, hey, this is shit. You should not do this. But obviously, marketing, we don't have any control over that.
Yeah, nobody needed to tell CCP that people weren't going to like that, right? Like,
yep.
You would have had to been like day one at the company and never having heard about EVE Online before to be like, oh yeah, people are going to love this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Communication's such a difficult topic when it comes to CSM because, like I said, the NDA, and even if it's something that's not, that we can talk about, it's just such a, what if we slip and say something else? Like I said, my struggle whenever I was on CSM was I would stream, and I have this horrible habit of talking without thinking and saying something before I think it through. And so like, I always just tried to like, you know what? I don't want to reveal anything, so I don't want to talk about CSM stuff. But I think in important matters, or when things come up, it's good to communicate, hey, we as the CSM, we're speaking for you guys. Like I said, Retriever Pack is a beautiful example. Scarcity, the whole time that was going on, like you can bet your butt that CSM was like, this sucks. And they were given, but like I said, there's times where CCP, they go and they do what they do and they have their plan and that's what they're working towards, so we can scream until we're blue in the face, but it's happening, and that's what we see a lot of is,
but that doesn't render the CSM useless?
No, because we're talking few select cases. There's a lot of things that happen.
We're talking what?
A few select cases where
things few happen. Select cases. Got it. I thought you were like giving some sort of expression that involved ammunition or something. Fuse versus cases. I don't know. Keep going.
Yeah, no. There's select cases where yes, CSM is useless, but if you could just see the daily life of a CSM or the weekly life and kind of what happens and what we're able to give input on, like there's a lot of things, or not a lot, there's things that happen where it's like CCP, they run something through us and we say no. So we're like the first line of defense for the players. Not always the strongest line because sometimes things get through us somehow, even though we give our feedback. But there's a lot of things where CCP will bring to us and we'll say, nope. Don't do that. Or, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, but you should turn this knob a little to the left, stuff like that. So,
okay.
Yes. Yeah. CSM, useless? Definitely not. There's a lot of great stuff that happens in the CSM.
I remember the first time you ran, I had to ask the question about like your time availability and all that stuff. You were Air Force. I was concerned about whether or not you'd have enough time to do it. Obviously, you had more than enough time because you gave an entire, like I said, doctoral thesis on faction warfare. However, you're a streamer. You're a big time streamer. You're a Twitch or you're a EVE partner, right?
Yep.
Are you a Twitch partner?
I'm Twitch partner right now. I am not an EVE partner because I haven't been able to hit you have to stream X amount of hours, and I've streamed maybe 4 hours a month for the past 8 months, if that.
That's, I guess, the point that I'm trying to get to, right? Like if I was to look at your stream and use that as like a crude analysis about your availability, can you convince me? First of all, are you going to be streaming more? But more importantly, can you convince me that you actually have the time to dedicate to this? What's your time commitment look like right now?
So I'm not going to go into like a whole story, but just a week and a half ago. So for the past 8 months, I've been living in a camper and my internet has been a mobile hotspot. Just a week and a half ago, I moved into a house and I've got fiber internet. So now I can stream. I'm streaming tomorrow. I just did a stream the other day so I can get back on a schedule.
So your lack of presence has been a lack of capability, not a lack of availability. Is that?
Yeah. Okay, to give you a perfect example, in my camper, if I was running, so I'd have my hot water heater on, my heater going because it's 20 degrees outside, and my computer on. If I used my microwave, my camper would short out and I had to reset everything. And I did that quite a bit, but there's only a limited amount of power. So, and then I just started a new job recruiting, and I'm in that learning stage, but I'm finally at a point to where it's like it's good to where, the nice thing about recruiting is I set my own schedule. I kind of do things as long as the job's getting done. I can kind of do what I want, which is freedom that I didn't have on my previous CSM term. And I'll go ahead and say the most important aspect of a CSM member up there at the top is being active, participating, going to all the meetings, all that stuff. So that's something that I realize that I can now do with everything happening, you know?
Very cool. So there's a lot of question about like what the CSM is for, right? Even among the people that admit that it has good value, like as an advisory council, as a check and balance. I've heard a lot this last year that the CSM just tries to curb CCP's worst instincts or whatever. But at the same time, clearly you were much more proactive. What do you feel, having experienced it and going into it, is the really what the CSM is for? And what would you like to make it into by being on it?
So it's more a focus group than anything. And that's why it's important for there to be a lot of variety on the CSM, and that's a huge issue with it. But it's mainly a focus group. It fills a lot of different functions, but if I had to sum it all up, I'd say a focus group. It's the ability for CCP to go to a group of players without revealing what they're doing and what they're working on, because they're a company, they have a broad design, and they don't want to release information, obviously. But yeah, we're a focus group. I said it earlier, first line of defense, really, for them to bring us stuff to kind of see what our reactions would be, get feedback on it, see what they can change, what they can do better. But to answer the second part of that question, one big thing with the CSM, more diverse. Like, there's a lot of times, and the cool thing about EVE players is we're not usually, hey, we've done this one thing and that's it. And I've seen that from my experience on the CSM. Is it's not like, oh, this nullsec guy only knows nullsec stuff, so that's all he's good for. No, that's not it at all. They're pretty well-rounded individuals, but there'd be times where something would come up and no one would have any clue about it. Wormhole space. So I really wish there's wider representation from everybody. And it's not like we don't have that. It's just, it'd be nice if it was less ruled by the block votes, so that we didn't have a CSM where there's 7 nullsec guys and 3 random whatevers. And then the second part to that is from CCP's side. And that's why I'm so passionate about getting on the CSM this year, is I want stuff brought to CSM at the beginning where we can have an active hand in it. Not, hey, we've been working on this. This is where we're at. This is what we got. What do you guys think? And it's like, I used the analogy one time. I was like, imagine they're building a house, right? And they say, hey, we built this house. We're completely finished. And you walk in and the freaking everything, there's some things that just aren't quite right. And you could have been there at the beginning of the stages of them building a house and said, oh, you should probably do this instead. I wish more of that happened, but I mean, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Right. So, the need for diversity, right? Like the thing is that like, that isn't something that you're going to fix. And that might not even be something that CCP can fix as like an active member. But it is also true that like a big part of that is, there's the big block votes and they get their people in. And just like last year, we don't get that many freelance candidates in. And one of the biggest concerns is always, if you dilute the voter base, then that only strengthens block votes. So like there are some people that we have some very, very, very strong candidates this year, including some very knowledgeable people. Including knowledgeable people in faction warfare and other places. Why do you feel like voting for you is the correct answer when it comes to like trying to get our representatives on the field, rather than trying to like, you've admitted you don't know that much about wormholes. Maybe the faction warfare people should team up with the wormhole people and find a candidate that can represent both of them. But you want to, come forward and be a representative. How can we believe that voting for you will actually get you across the finish line?
Yeah. And I know this sounds like a big-headed thing to fall back on, but I've gotten us to this point to where we now have the changes we've been asking for years. Faction warfare, I literally sat down with the people who make the decisions and said, hey, this is what you need to work on. This is why, and this is how you should do it. And I got those results. Right. Obviously I worked with others, but that's one of those things where, a lot of other people don't have the ability to say that because they've not been on the CSM, but I can literally say, hey, look, I did this, and now I want to be there to see it through and get it to the finish line and actually, get that completed product that I fought so hard for. And then on top of that, I've got other goals and aspirations where I just want things in Eve to be fun. I want people to be able to do activities in their areas and them to be balanced with other areas of space. So I think every candidate brings a strength and weakness to the table, or a strength. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, but everyone has their own strengths. And I just know that, like me, I can definitely stand on my previous success and build off of that. And then also my general knowledge and experience in Eve. Like I said, I don't have any wormhole experience, so that's definitely needed. But I have, 12 years in Eve. I've spent maybe 6 years total in faction warfare. I've done quite a bit. So,
and managed to avoid becoming a bitter vet during that time, which a lot of other people can't necessarily.
Man, there's been times.
You and me both, man. We've skimmed the surface, but so far so good. Shoot, I had another one that I wanted to say, but now I just went out of my. Oh, what I think is the most important, or what I take out of this, with all of these interviews, I have to figure out like what kind of person wants to vote for this person, right? And ultimately, I think that you probably have one of the most cleanest cases, probably of this entire election season, right? Like, ultimately, there are two types of Eve players right now: those who watched FanFest and is super pumped, and those who watched FanFest and thinks that CCP made the biggest mistake ever. If you are part of that second camp, Torvald is probably not going to be the candidate for you. But if you're part of that first camp, if you think that what CCP Aurora went on the stage, if you're like me and you believe that she went on the stage and said all the right words, Torvald's the dude, right? Torvald's where that came from. And I think that out of almost out of respect to that, it is worth, since Torvald is willing to step back up. Okay, now we agree. Now we all agree. What you said was good. Let's bring it home. I think that you probably have one of the best cases of the let's bring this home of anybody, right? So I think that's really strong.
Yeah, man, that Reddit post I put up about just feeling defeated, and I'll be honest with you, I came home from lunch and I saw the Doctor Who event, and I sat there in my computer chair in my camper, and I didn't cry, but it like hurt me right in the feelings. I was like, man, I put my heart and soul into faction warfare,
right?
And then to see something else, and obviously there's a lot of other stuff that goes into that. But
how do you feel about the Doctor Who event now, by the way?
I mean, none of us can speak on the resources that went into it. In my personal opinion, Eve is such a unique just IP. I don't know what IP stands for. People says the Eve IP, whatever that is. Eve is so unique, and there's so much stuff in the game that I don't think we need any collaborations outside of Eve. I don't know. I think we've got all these factions and stories that if they wanted to do something like that, like obviously CCP is going to do what they want. But intellectual property, that's what that means. Nice. Okay, you learn something new every day. But yeah, the Eve IP is so massive that I don't think we need any kind of outside source coming in. Doctor Who event, if people enjoyed it, if it brought people in, great. Me personally, I'm like, we've got so much shit to work with in here. You've got an entire freaking sandbox to play with. Don't bring in the dirt from the kids next door's playground. Like, let's play in our sand and make our sand castles, And
I think the largest consensus that I've heard is that the Doctor Who part of it was relatively unnecessary, but the event part of it had a lot of promise. There's a lot of people that like the mechanics of it.
I personally would rather have seen some kind of event like that with the empires, the factions, some kind of craziness going on that we had to take part in and involve ourselves with, rather than some TV show crap. Like, I would rather have seen anything in Eve. But yeah, the event stuff, cool. Like, I have no problem with, any kind of new content in Eve, as long as it's fun, engaging, and rewarding is subjective, but any kind of new content, great. Just make sure it's Eve content, not Doctor Who, man.
Yeah. It was inelegant at best. I do disagree, as it was said in chat, that it was a violation of the lore, but we're not going to get into that right now. But yeah, like, at the very least, it was inelegant. That's just the word I'm going to use for it.
Yep.
Cool. So how do you feel that Abyssal Proving Conduits, like, you were one of the earliest advocates of Abyssal Proving Grounds. As I said, one of the times that we've talked, I think, if it wasn't for you, I don't think that Abyssal Proving Conduits would have even survived long enough to make it to its 2.0. You were a huge advocate of Abyssal Proving Conduits and made them happen. Like, literally made them happen when there wasn't enough people to trigger it. You were coordinating people to make it so there was enough people at a certain time to actually cause the Proving Conduits to happen. So how do you feel that they are now in the way that they've kind of hit this nice rhythm and become integrated into the universe?
I mean, man, in my opinion, they're in a perfect spot. The way they keep fluctuating, and there's different events where it's, hey, today we're doing frigates and we're doing this event, or next week we're doing battleships or T3 cruisers. It's cool because these changes are so small that they have to do to just allow for any kind of different, series of events to go on in the actual arena. I think they're in an incredible spot. I know there's people out there who hate instant stuff and they're just completely against it, but let people enjoy the game how they want. Who knows? Those people doing the Abyssal Proving Grounds, I'm a good example. If it wasn't for the Proving Grounds, like, I wouldn't be playing Eve right now if it wasn't for the Abyss and the Proving Grounds. They're saying, It takes people out of space. How many people are here just because they want to do that, nothing else? And I mean, still, the resources to get those ships, all that's still flowing through the economy. It's creating explosions. It's creating a demand for stuff.
Yeah, I think that the problem with that argument, like, if high sec is so fun, then nobody's going to want to go to null sec, or if abyssals are too fun, if Abyssal Proving Conduits are too fun, then no one's going to do open world PvP. And I think that the problem with that is that in a lot of cases, the internal debate isn't, should I go roam and try to get a fight, or should I use an Abyssal Proving Conduit? It's, should I do an Abyssal Proving Conduits tonight, or should I do some other game, right? Should I do some other activity? Do I want to play around in HiSec, or if HiSec isn't fun to do something with, I'm not going to be like, well, where else can I find fun in this game? Like, you're just going to play a different game.
Exactly. And now all those ships that are getting destroyed in the Proving Grounds are not getting destroyed, and it's affecting the economy. But I think that highlights a different problem, and it's a much wider problem. That's what I was talking about earlier with the PvE. Eve is such a complex problem, and I was thinking about this earlier because it happened to me today, where I was doing planetary interaction, and some elite solo PvPer came and tackled my epithel, and I used my warp core stab to get away, and they were salty about it. And I'm like, okay, it's not okay for people to blob you, but it's okay for you, who's intending to do PvP, to kill my ship, and you're mad that I found a way to get away. It's such a complex problem, and I think there definitely needs to be more people out in space, more stuff happening, more content being generated because people are out in space doing stuff. That's why, like, I definitely want to go in the CSM this year with the PvE mindset of, hey, what can we do to null sec? What can we give them out there? That way people are flourishing out there. They're undocking, they're wanting to undock to make money, have fun. And now people have a target to shoot and kill. But then there's that complex problem of when people are going to do PvE, they're not wanting to do PvP. So they're going to get away any chance they can.
Right.
And then those groups are going to respond. So if you're going out there in your 1, 2, 5-man gang, and then you get a fleet of 50 people dropping on you because you attacked one person doing PvE, It's just everyone has an issue, and I don't. There's no solution to it. I mean, it's
Right. It's better to have things to fight over than just simply only stabbing at the underbelly, right? Like,
yep.
I personally do not consider, roaming around and killing mining ships in nullsec PvP. Like, if there isn't a serious threat that they're gonna kill me back, then I mean, like, if I'm not fighting, but that might be the faction warfare in me, right? Like, if they're not fighting back, then we're not fighting. But there's a lot of that cat and mouse gameplay that a lot of people like too.
Yep.
I think that a lot of things have altered that. Maybe the ESS raids have sort of changed that, but I don't even think even that has necessarily nailed it when it comes to building meaningful fights. Do you think that there is even like a solution? Like, not even what it is, but do you even think that there could be a way to fix this? Is it a cursed problem?
Honestly, yeah, like no matter what happens, what CSP does, there's going to be the people, and you see it all the time. People are mad because they would go and they're hunting and they find someone and they try and kill them, but those people warp away as soon as they get in the local.
Right.
And then the response to you coming in local is a fleet coming after you of however many people that are blobbing you. And so it's now it's, you can't get your solo PvE miner kill, but then you're mad that there's a fleet after you. And it's just like, there's no way to fix that. That's just how it is. It's people don't want to lose their stuff. They want to take fights they can win. And it's honestly a human mindset. It's nothing, no matter what CSP does, if they implement the greatest, most, resource filled PvE in the game out in nullsec, and then people are doing that, no matter what, those hunters are going to come after them, and they're either going to get lucky and kill them, or those people are going to warp away and they're going to get a response fleet that is going to come and blob them and they can't fight it. It's
yeah.
There's no end to that. It's just the main important part is just giving people a reason to move out to null where it should be dangerous and risky, giving them fun options to do that way they can, log in and be excited, or at least be engaged with what they're doing if they want to be. And that way they can live out there and not be told to, hey, go run abyssals in high sec,
I think that one of the problems that we run into is just the sheer number of times that like there is an encounter or potential encounter in which everyone walks away unhappy, right?
Oh, yeah.
The ratter has had their time messed up. The PvPer has not gotten any kills. The person who responds to the ESS has their people run away, and the guy who is raiding the ESS got their raid interrupted and had to run. Like, nobody walks away from that feeling good, and that just by instinct, from a game design perspective, that feels like the kind of thing that you would want to at least minimize.
Yeah, and I don't see. I mean, no matter what they do, what they implement, you're never going to get away from that stuff happening.
Yeah,
now
you need continual effort.
Now, the important part is in those frustrating, shitty times, there's some great stories and content that happens, and it's not always cut and dry where it's everyone, there's a lot of fun to be had there. And what's most important is to encourage that stuff to happening as much as possible, which means getting people out in space. And that's why there's a very delicate balance between introducing activities, and I'm going to focus on null right now because I feel like that's a lot of the uproar. You need activities out there where people can be freaking sweating at the edge of their seat, playing a game, having fun, and getting rewarded appropriately. And the people who like to do the AFK ratting. Now, I'm not saying they need to be both rewarded at the same rate, but you need those different avenues for those people who like either way. And they need to be good, rewarding, fun, whatever. That way, the most amount of people possible are in space. That way, those situations where everybody does go home pissed off because it was just one big shit show, at least those can happen. And it's not like, hey, everyone's sitting in stations spinning their shit because everything sucks,
Right. To me, I think that the solution is probably in the direction of like faction warfare, where the PvE, quote unquote PvE, is designed to be done in PvP equipment. So that way the person who's doing the PvE feels a little bit more prepared and ready to fight the person that's coming in. And therefore things can go wrong on both sides, but just on the surface, it looks like it might be okay from both perspectives, right? The person who's ratting may not want to give up his ground for whatever reason. There might be a reason to incentivize them to stand your ground in the same way as like a Plex, right? Like I don't know if I can avoid running away in a Plex, I'm going to do so that way I can continue to run the timer as long as I can and you know, make my progress. But at the same time, I'm also ready to, you know, I can fly in a ship that's ready to fight. Either way, that's not really where I'm going with right now. It's a fun thing to explore, but I'm running low on time. So I guess, let's say you don't get elected. Okay. We're going to go with a hypothetical. You're not going to get elected. All right. But we're going to give you an opportunity right now, right? You were the man. You set us on this course to do faction warfare this summer or this winter. You're not elected to the CSM. What is the one message that you have for CCP right now that you need to get across, even if you're not elected? Like, what is the one thing, if this is the thing that they listen to, that you want to say?
Create fun, engaging shit that people can do and have fun with and be rewarded across the entire universe, not just any specific area. Give people a good reason to undock, create content, make their money, and have fun.
Solid. All right, you've got it's your wrap up time. You got about 10 minutes if you want.
All right. Well, basically we talked about everything, guys. My two main focuses, faction warfare and PvE across EVE altogether. I am heavily standing on the crutch that is my previous success. I mean, I know, like I said earlier, a lot of people besides just me went into faction warfare getting its revamp. But I literally sat at a table with the people who make the decisions. I presented my heart out and got the changes, and now I want to be there to be able to see these changes through, be a part of the feedback process, make faction warfare a fun, exciting place to be where people want to, whether it's they're bored from nullsec or wormhole space or new players finding something to get into the game. Faction warfare should be that great area where you are fighting other players, but you're also interacting with these empires that are, these major forces in the game. I think it's pretty important to have influence from them in there too. So yeah, I just want to have a huge part, be able to be there at the table, actively participating in its entire development. And yeah, aside from faction warfare and finally getting my dreams realized, definitely have a big problem with how EVE is going right now with just, what seems to be just an issue of content across the game. And honestly, I'll say it revolves around PvE and people making money and being out in space. I know scarcity was a shit time, and CSP did what they believe was right. But what's really important right now is just players having something to do.
Do you think scarcity's over?
Man, that's a tough one. So I'm not much of a market guy. I do industry. I've not been active enough to pay attention to prices. I think we're still in just such a weird point where they're still dialing the knobs and everything. It seems like they've got everything where they want it to be resource wise. And right now it's just them kind of picking and, choosing what they adjust. But yeah, I think for the most part, it seems over. It's just a matter of recovering from it. Like, this is the new normal. And, what we're going to see now is them balancing and kind of fixing things here and there, right? Whether like the capital and faction ships, or numbers and resources across the universe. Cause I think they've achieved what they have achieved what they set out to do.
All right. Well, I think that the summary is pretty much what I said before. Like if you don't think, if you think that CCP should just delete faction warfare, if you think that like we should just double down on old school ratting and all that stuff as our way to fix all of our problems, then Torvald's probably not the guy for you. But if you're at all interested in the kind of thing that CCP has been saying that they're going to be doing, or if you're worried about whether or not the CSM get things done, I think that it's inarguable that like this guy got it done. And, he obviously made an impact. He obviously was able to get his, the results are right there. And so absolutely, if you think that that is the hope, as many people do, then Torvald is a person to put very high up on your ballot. I look forward to seeing you. And of course, you know, we're gonna chat and bullshit and all that stuff, regardless of whether or not you're elected. But I do hope to see you on that short list of people going to Iceland.
Oh man, I hope so. And Ash, don't be mad at me. I am back in faction warfare, but I'm on the Kadari side now.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that part. We're just going to walk right over that one. We'll see. I'll try to redeem you later. Fine. I'll ask this question now. What is your position on cat ears?
Man, I think there's a good way they can do them. I'm not an anime guy, but I think cat ears have potential in Eve. I personally wouldn't wear them, but I think if people want to wear them, hell yeah. If I were to wear them, they got to be some scary, cool looking, like badass cat ears, not like the anime ones.
Well, but I use cat ears as a shorthand, right? Like as an idea of like that kind of cosmetic. And nowadays, of course, my position is that snake hat is greater than cat ears. So, I mean, there are other options, of course, but I think that customization is important. And I'm sure that many people will be happy with that opinion, and some people will be frustrated by it.
One of the things that I've said over the years when it comes to like cosmetics, I would hate to be in a situation where I'm getting killed by a ship with a Hello Kitty skin and the guy's wearing cat ears. I would hate that. That would be absolutely devastating. But you know what? If people want to rock it, then hell yeah, let them go for it. This is Eve. Play it how you want, look how you want, and do what you want. Bring it on.
All right. Do you have anything else that you want to go over before we wrap things up?
No, man. Just appreciate you having me on here. To all you on chat. Hopefully you throw me up there somewhere on your list. Like I said, I'm there for the finishing my fight with faction warfare, and then just hopefully getting fun, engaging PvE content across the universe that people can go to, whether you're in any area of space, not instant stuff. So those are my two big focuses. I have a really good track record. Didn't talk about this much, but my list on CSM 15, I had faction warfare, content creators, alliance tournament, and PvE. And then here we are. Faction warfare is getting its love. We've got the partner program. The alliance tournament came back, and PvE. So
everything's either, all four of those are either something that have been knocked out or clearly signaled as being what they are working on. So that's quite the claim to be able to make, I guess I could say.
Feels pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And I just want to keep fighting the good fight, man. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on here.
Yes, absolutely. And best of luck to you.
Just vote for me. Just don't even question. Just do it. Just do it.
Just do it. Don't let your memes be dreams. All right. On behalf of Torvald and myself, this has been the Eve Universe Show CSM coverage. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure before you leave to like, comment, and subscribe. Ask any questions down below that you have for Torvald. He'll come and answer it, or I'll bring it to his attention and get it answered. Otherwise, you can go onto his forum post, and we didn't mention this really during the thing, but you run the Abyssal Lurkers Discord, which is one of the major places to swap stories and information about the Abyss. So you can always find him there as well if you want to talk to him. And trust me, he'll talk to you. He'll probably talk to you more than you want to. But I guess that should just about wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for participating. We want everybody to be able to be as informed as they possibly can, because an informed electorate makes a good CSM, and a good CSM is effective for us. It's a very important tool for us all. So if you're watching the playlist, go ahead and just hang tight while it goes to the next video. But otherwise, I've been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. And until next time, I'll see you in space.